Gradually, Sue would come to realize that she'd been abducted since childhood, but simply didn't understand what was happening.
That was really, when I was 19, was the first time that I remembered seeing these beings when I was a kid. Coming into the room and then waking up and finding them standing next to your bed and being terrified. And feeling that, I remember feeling that the world was just not a safe place, that there was nowhere that was safe, that no matter where I went or what I did, that they could find me, and that nobody could help me, nobody could stop it. It was really scary. Scary way to grow up. And so as I got older, that's what bothered me so much with my kids, was knowing that they were also being visited and there was nothing I could do about it. We're just finding some...
David, Sue's husband, manages a construction company. A nature lover, he's preparing for retirement by turning part of their land into a Christmas tree farm. David gets up at dawn every morning. He's never been abducted himself, and he lived with Sue for over 30 years.
Yeah. The trees on the sides of the field are all old, a lot of them, and they're starting to fall, starting to fall on my Christmas trees and stuff. So I take them down, use them for firewood rather than letting them fall into the field.
He's such a good boy. He's such a good boy.
You have seen things yourself around here?
Not so much seeing things, but being paralyzed.
Oh, yeah.
Held down, and where I can't move. It was involved with things that were going on with Sue, as near as I can tell, and I tried to get up and I'd be paralyzed. I couldn't move.
The craft was disc-shaped. There was a row of windows on the forward edge of that disc. Betty and Barney observed a blue-white light shining through those windows. And when Barney stopped the car and walked into a field to take a closer look at this craft that had descended to within 100 feet of their vehicle and then descended further as it moved into the field, Barney held the binoculars up to his eyes and he observed 8 to 11 individuals looking back at him that he described as being, quote, somehow not human. He said they were dressed in black, shiny uniforms. All but one moved away from the windows in unison, and their arms went up, and the craft then tilted toward him, and 2 little red lights started to extend out from each side of the craft. At this point, Barney believed that they had a plan, and that plan was to capture him. Something started to drop down out of the bottom of the craft. He became very, very terrified. He ran back to the car, screaming to Betty that they had to get out of there or they were going to be captured. He got into the car, which had been left running. The interior light was on at that time because Betty was in the car. It was parked directly in the middle of the road, and they went speeding down the highway. He told Betty to roll down the window, to look up, and she looked up. She was expecting to see the lights from the craft. She did not see the lights. She said she didn't see anything. She later realized that it was directly over the top of their vehicle. And at that point, both Betty and Barney heard a series of code-like buzzing sounds striking the trunk of the car in the same location where they found the shiny spots the following day. A tingling sensation passed through their bodies, the car vibrated, and the next thing they knew, they were 35 miles down the road south of that location with very little memory of what had happened in the interim. The watches that they were wearing that night were wind-up watches. They were working fine until they had this close encounter with a UFO, and then those watches never ran again. Barney was a meticulous dresser. He was very perplexed and disturbed because the toes of his best dress shoes were so deeply scraped. He had to use them for yard work and purchase new shoes. The dress that Betty was wearing that night had been in fine shape when she put it on in the morning. However, when she arrived home, the hem was torn down on one side, the lining of the dress was torn from waist to hemline, the zipper at the back of her dress had a 2-inch tear in the stitching and a 1-inch tear in the thick zipper fabric. She could not think of any kind of prosaic explanation to explain what had happened to that dress. She placed it in her closet, knowing that she would have to repair it. The next time she took it out, it was covered with a pink powdery substance. She put it on her clothesline, the pink blew away, but the dress was discolored. The blue dress had taken on a pinkish tone in certain areas. Scientists later found out, when they were investigating this dress and interviewed Betty, that these non-human entities had actually held Betty by the upper arms. And those areas of the dress were very deeply saturated with this substance. No one has ever been able to identify what it is. They know that it didn't come from Betty. They know that it is unusual. I spoke about this in my lecture yesterday, but no one has ever been able to identify what that pink powdery substance was. I'm not trying to convince anyone who doesn't want to believe that this is real to believe that it's real. I only want the truth, and I want to separate fact from fiction, because a lot of fiction has been built around what happened to Betty and Barney.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.